Hi there, I'm Michelle the Painter from Berkshire Paint and Sip, and this is Paint and Sip at Home. Alright, so today I'm going to be painting Guardian Angel, and I'm sipping on some Earl Grey tea. And if you enjoy this process, I do hope that you like and subscribe to my channel, and that you also check out my Patreon page where you're going to find additional painting perks. So let's get painting and let's get sipping. Alright, so for my materials today, I'm going to be using a stretched and primed 16 by 20 inch canvas. If you're painting along with me, you can certainly switch up the size, but that's what I'll be using. I'm going to be using acrylic paint today. My colors are titanium white, Mars black, ultramarine blue, green oxide, fluorescent orange, deep yellow, and burnt umber, which I will call brown. And of course you can switch up those colors if you'd like to, but that's what I'll be using. For my tools today, I have a standard number 2 pencil, and then I have 3 brushes. I have a 1/2 inch wide flat bristle brush. I have a number 6 round synthetic brush, and I have a number 0 round synthetic brush. And I will refer to these as small, medium, and large as we go through the painting process. And of course you can switch those up as well. If you're painting along with me, you'll probably want a cup of water for washing your brushes, as well as a paper towel for drying your brushes. And down below this video, I will be providing you with a couple of additional resources that can help you throughout your painting process. One of them is a link where you can purchase the same exact paint kit that I'm using, from the large canvas to the same kind of paint and all that good stuff. So that's down there. There's also a link where you can download a free image of the final painting. So you can print that and use it as visual reference as you go through the painting process. And there's also written step-by-step instructions down there for you as well. And that's all we're going to need today. Alright, so what we're going to be doing for the first step is we're doing an outline of our angel, and we're putting a line in where our horizon line is going to be. So I'm going to be using my pencil, and I'm going to give you a couple of markers, and then we're just going to connect those markers. And we're not going for any detail here, we're just going for a generic exterior shape so we have somewhere to start the painting process. So on the left-hand side, I'm going to be coming down, I would say about 3 to 3.5 inches. I'm making myself a little bit of a mark. Then I'm going to come over at about that same height, just shy of the center of my canvas. So if this is the center of my canvas, I'm about 1.5 inches to 2 inches shy of that. I'm going to make myself another little marker. Then I'm going to come about, I would say, if this, between these two, I'm over from the left about 1/3 of the way. So if this is center, I'm to the left a little bit, and then I'm down maybe 3 or 4 inches, and maybe from the left-hand side of my canvas. So I have 3 markers here, 1, 2, 3. I'm going to make myself one more marker. It's going to be about halfway into my canvas, and it's all the way down at the bottom, right about here. So 4 markers. This is going to represent the head, and then this is going to represent the wing. So how I'm going to do this is I am going to do my head first. I'm going to bring this a little in an upward motion, and then I'm coming down like this, just past where I see this marker here, and then I'm going to bring it back in like this. So not a real dramatic shape, just something that's going to give us a nice silhouette of the head. Then I'm going to connect this one to here, and how I'm going to do this is I'm going to do it with like 3 bumps. So I'm going to do 1 bump in like this. I'm going to do another bump going up in this direction, which is about halfway in the height of that of the head, and then I'm going to do a 3rd one coming up like this. And then I'm going to connect this marker to here. So this is going to be the exterior of the wing. And how I'm going to do this is I want the top portion out a little bit farther than here. So as I come over here, I'm going to just kind of make this exterior shape. And I'm watching where this bottom marker is here. And I want it to come out just a little bit farther than that, and then just kind of bring myself back in an inward type of motion. And wings can come in all different shapes, so yours does not have to be exactly the same shape as mine, and we're going to be having the feathery portion on the outside anyway, so that's going to be able to shape it whatever way you want. And then we're going to put our horizon line up about a third or a little bit less than half the way up our canvas. So if this is about halfway up your canvas, just come maybe about 2 inches below that and make yourself a little bit of a marker, and you can just bring this kind of straight over like this. And that is all we're going to be doing for our outline. So you can put your pencil away, take out your large brush for the next step, and just get ready. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're painting our sky. I'm going to be using my bristle brush. The colors I'm using are black, brown, blue, white, orange, and yellow. So all of my colors except for green. So how I'm going to do this, I want my top of my sky to be very moody and kind of dark. So I'm going to use my black, brown, and blue up at the top. As I come down my sky, I'm going to be transitioning into it being lighter and lighter as it comes down the sky. And then as it gets towards the bottom of the sky, I'll start using my sunset, sunrise colors, my orange and my yellow. I will be putting the sun on later, so I don't have to worry about preserving, you know, a really light spot. And I'll get that sky on there, and then I'll put some light drifting clouds going by. So during this process, I'm not going to use a lot of paint because I kind of want it to dry pretty fast, so that way if I do want to add a layer or a cloud or anything like that, it'll be nice and dry for me to do so. So I'm starting with black, brown, blue. I got all 3 colors on my brush, black, brown, and blue. And I'm just going to start up at the top so I can get that really dark kind of area up at the top. And that's really the only time that I'm going to be picking up black. Now I'm going to pick up blue and brown with a teeny touch of white paint. So what's going to happen, because I'm using a little bit of white paint on my brush, what'll happen is it'll start to get nice and soft looking, like that, like this is more atmospheric dimension as opposed to just the sky. So it might be clouds drifting by, it might be you know, some haze from the city below. It can really be whatever you imagine it to be. So I'm still just picking up brown, blue, and a little bit of white at this point. And in a second, I'm going to stop picking up the brown, and I'm just going to pick up a little bit of blue and white. So I'm using this kind of long crisscross type of motion. So that way the colors blend nice, but it gives it that soft type of appearance. Stopping painting for a second because I want to talk to you about going in through this area. So when you go in through this area around the angel, you don't want to find yourself painting around the angel like that. You want to continue to have that left to right brush stroke, so that way it looks like this sky is the, you know, extension of this sky in through here. So right now I'm going to pick up white with a little bit of blue on my brush without washing my brush, and you'll start to see the transition from the darker tones up top into the lighter tones that we're going to have down below. So I will bump into my pencil outline so that way it'll look like it's behind that wing when we go to paint that wing. So I know that I can still see my pencil mark underneath my paint, so that's okay. I just want to make sure that I am doing my left to right brush stroke, and that whatever happens over here resembles whatever's on that right hand side. So it doesn't have to have a lot of detail in it, you just want it to look like it's in the same color family, so, or a similar color pattern to it. So as I'm going through this, if I put a little bit darker blue over there, I want to make sure that I bring it over here on the left hand side, just so that really looks like it is the same sky and that it translates from left to right. And then as I go over in through here, as I'm going down my canvas, I'm going to start to get it lighter and lighter. So I just picked up white, and now what I'm doing is I'm working the remnants of whatever was on my brush off. So this way it's going to give it a nice transition down to those lighter colors, in a nice gradual type of a blend going down towards those lighter colors. I just picked up more white as I'm getting down towards the bottom of my horizon. And when I get down to the bottom of my horizon, you can see I'm bringing it all the way down to the bottom. This way, again, it's going to give it that natural appearance as I add those sunset or sunrise colors onto it. So right now, if you had a ton of paint on your brush, or if you know that you still have the dark colors on there, you may want to give your brush a quick wash and dry. So I washed and dried my brush. This way, if I had those darker colors still on my brush, as I add the sunsetty sunrise kind of colors, it won't turn it too dark on me. So I just washed and dried my brush, and I'm picking up a very little bit of orange and yellow on my brush at the same time. And I'm just going to start adding it to the bottom of my horizon in through here. And I want it to transition up into the sky above. So as I'm doing this, I'm really using a very light brush stroke to just get it to softly blend in with the colors above it, and I'm not pressing really hard. I'm just using a really light brush stroke in through here, so it's allowing it to blend in with those other colors. I'm going to pick up a tiny bit of just yellow at this point, so the colors start to get more in an intense kind of way as they're going, dissipating up into that sky. But you could make yours softer, you could make yours brighter, however you foresee them to be. I'm going to put probably a little bit of my orange up in through the sky, up in through here. But right now I'm just kind of making sure my paint is nice and soft before I start to add the orange in it. So right now what I'm doing is, I see that my paint is drying, so what I'm doing is just kind of blending it a little bit as it's drying a bit more, and then I'm going to add some soft kind of clouds with some color in them. So I just washed and dried my brush a little bit. I put a tiny bit of my orange on there, and I'm just going to really kind of add these drifting, silhouetted, soft type of clouds up in that sky. And again, you can really imagine this to be whatever intensity you want. Maybe you want yours to be really prominent, and you want yours to be really bold and tell a lot about what's happening in that sky. So make yours as exciting or as subtle as you want. And if you put some here, maybe you put a little touch over in through here, and just keep adding until you feel like you've got the intensity as much or as little as you want. And if you run into an area where you're like, I just did too much in that area, back off, let it dry for a minute, and then just come back and add more or add another layer on top of it. Layering skies totally makes them look a lot more realistic. So the more information that you put in there, the more they're gonna resemble the sky that we see in nature. So you can continue to have a whole bunch of fun with this. We're going to use the same brush for the next step. So once you've got your beautiful, exciting sky on here, you can wash and dry this large brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're doing the first layer of our land. We're going to use our large bristle brush, and we're using just black paint. And I'm just coloring it in. There's no special brush stroke. There's no information that we're giving here. All we're doing is painting it black. When you get up to the edge of your wing, you don't even really, if you wanted to, you could, put your brush in this direction so you start the little edges of it, but that's not even necessary because you're going to be doing the all of the information when we paint the wing anyway. So just black paint. When you get up to the horizon line, this does not have to be a straight line because we still have to paint all of the buildings. So I'm just bringing it up pretty close, and even if there's a little gap between your paint and the sky, that's okay because you'll be filling that in with your buildings. And then once you've got this step done, we are going to be utilizing this same brush for the next step. So you can just, you don't even need to wash it because we're going to be using this color plus another color for the next step. So you can just get ready. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're doing the first layer of our angel. So I'm using my large bristle brush and I'm going to be using brown and black paint. So how I'm going to do this is I'm going to do it more black over on this left-hand side. And then as I kind of go towards the edges, I'll be using more brown. I'm not going to wash my brush throughout the process. I'm just going to kind of transition into using brown and black as I get over to the right sides. But I'm going to start with just black over here on the left side. So I just loaded my brush with black paint. I'm going to put it all throughout this left-hand side. I'm going to stay away from the edges a little bit, so just black paint in through here. And now what I'm going to do, this is about the full area that I'll do with just black. And now what I'm going to do is, without washing my brush, I'm picking up brown paint as well. So I have brown and black paint on my brush. I'm going to do the head right now. When I'm doing the head, I'm not concerned about the edges being perfect because it's hair, so I don't necessarily want it to be a real clean line, but I want to make sure that it has a good shape to it. So I'm just kind of using the corner of my brush and just kind of giving myself a little bit of a soft edge, so to speak, for the edge of the hair, and then just bringing it back around in through here. Maybe bring that out just a little bit more. And we'll be doing another layer on the head as well. So if you don't get yours shaped exactly as you want it to be, that's okay, because you'll be able to give some more information to the edges of it and to the hair itself when we add the second layer. So that's going to be my head. Then again, I'm just going to be picking up brown and black on my brush at the same time. My edges are probably the most important part, but you don't really need a ton of detail on them. So as I'm doing the edges, really I'm just kind of using a soft brush stroke, and I'm not terribly, again, concerned about the perfection of it. I just am really looking to make sure that I have a good coat on the whole wing. I am going to be, as I paint this wing, I'm going to be using kind of a directional type of brush stroke. Again, it doesn't have to be perfect, but this is going to start the direction of your feathers. Although this is just the base coat, if it's not perfect, it's all right, but it will start the direction of them. So as I am going towards the edges, so this is going to be in through here. I'm going to do this something like this. As I'm going up towards this top portion in through here, I can start to pull some of these little wing or feathers out with the corner of my brush, and they'll overlap into the sky a little bit. I'm not, again, looking for them to be the end-all be-all colors right now, but this again is just getting the base coat on here. It's setting the stage to where we want, or the shape of our wing, that overall shape of the wing that we're looking for, and then I'm having them just kind of come down on this side in through here. Again, just using my brush in that directional type of brush stroke, so you can start to see the direction of the feathers themselves. When I come into this area where the black is, I'm just going to kind of overlap it a little bit so you can see the edges of the wings, or of the feathers, as they're coming down in through this area. And then as I go towards this deeper area in back through here, I'm still just picking up brown and black, but I might pick up a little bit more black, so it transitions into a little bit darker as it's coming into this area in through here. So I am, when you see light spots and dark spots throughout this whole area, that's okay. That's the intended first coat that I have created. And my wing is going to be pretty darn big back in through here, and it'll come down in through here. So we're leaving this dark area as if that's the back of the angel, itself. So it'll have that little dark area. I am going to use just a little bit more brown on my brush and kind of give myself the illusion of another wing in through here on this left hand side. So I just picked up some brown and I'm just kind of overlapping that wet black paint just a little bit so you can have the illusion of a second one in through there. And then we are going to be switching to our small brush for the next step. So once you've got your first layer of your beautiful wing on here, you can put your large brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're painting the silhouette of our city. So I'm going to be using my small brush, and I'm going to be using just black paint for this step. So how I'm going to do this is I'm really just looking to have a silhouette along my skyline, and I want this to really appear like it's got a lot of dimension and depth to it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to have different size buildings, and I'm going to have a lot of really tiny short buildings in through here, which is where I'm going to have my sun. So I've got just black paint on my small brush, and you can use a little bit of water in your black paint to get your paint to be more fluid. And I'm going to do a couple of tall buildings along the edges of my city on this side, on the right hand side. And again, I'm just using black to start. You could certainly utilize lighter colors if you want this to be more like daylight, but I am going to be adding some highlights from the sun in a little bit, so that's why I'm starting with a black base. So when I go to do all of my little highlights and shadows and stuff like that, well, not shadows, but highlights and more information, this black is going to act as a really nice base to it. And then as I go through these, you can really have these buildings any size that you want, but I'm going to do some pretty big buildings to start, and then I will just fill in the blanks with a whole bunch of little buildings. So maybe I'll do another one in through here, and I'm trying to keep the tops kind of squared, and I'm trying to keep them pretty straight, but you know, as painting goes, especially when you're free styling and free handing like this, they're not always going to be perfect, so you might end up coming back and just finessing yours a little bit more after they dry or after you look at them from a distance. And sometimes when I'm painting from the side like this, they don't always turn out exactly as I want them to, so I end up fiddling with them a little bit more later, but I'm just getting some larger structures in here to start, and then once I've got my larger structures, I will then go more quickly as I go through the in between them and do some smaller ones. But doing these larger ones first just really kind of gives me a starting point where I don't have to do too many, and it's going to balance that horizon line really nicely. And I'm not modeling this after any specific city, so I guess if you wanted to, if you've got a distinct skyline of the city where you live or of one that you know of or love, you could certainly model this after that. So now that I've got the major ones in, now really all I'm going to do is start making a whole bunch of different little marks along that horizon line that are going to resemble smaller buildings, and I'm just going to go all the way across so I can make them any size that I want. I'm just trying to not be super consistent with them, so I definitely want to have, you know, every now and again maybe I'll have a skinnier one, maybe I'll have, you know, maybe there's a round one, maybe there's one with a little tower on top. You can, you know, really make this into whatever way that you want, but I'm just kind of freestyling and making these a lot of tiny, really tiny ones off in the distance, and then I'm going to go ahead and do the same in through here. And then we are going to be utilizing our let's use our small brush for the next step too. So once you've got your skyline, your city, your silhouette of your skyline, you can actually just wash and dry this small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're building our buildings. So we're going to put the rest of the city on. So we just did the silhouette of sorts. Now I want there to appear that there's an entire city down there. So how I'm going to do that, I'm using my small brush. You might find that you want to use your medium brush after you see what I'm doing, but I'm going to use my small brush just to keep myself in control. And really what we're going to be doing is a whole bunch of mark making. So we're going to be making some vertical lines and some horizontal lines, and we're going to be just giving the illusion of a whole bunch of buildings back there. But I want to bring the eye into the city. So the way that I'm going to do that is I'm putting a road going from the city, because usually I find that in every major city, there's one main road that goes down the center of the city right into the heart of it. So we're building that road first. So I'm going to be using white and black on my small brush. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to start, I'm going to say somewhere in this vicinity, right up in through here. Oops, need a little more white so we can see it. Somewhere in through here. And I'm going to have it traveling all the way to here. So I'm just going to make a diagonal line to start. And for me, because I know that this is closer to us down and through here, I'm going to just widen it a little bit on this as it comes closer towards us. I want it to look like maybe there's, you know, a center dark area in the road. So I'm just kind of giving myself the illusion of a line down the center of the road. And if you make it too wide, like I just totally did up in the midsection, just wipe your brush off, putting back a little bit of black, and just put a little bit black on it. Yeah, there we go. And I want it nice and narrow as it enters into the city and through there. So now that I've got my road on there, all I'm going to do is and I'm just getting my road to just kind of disappear off in the distance here. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to make myself a whole bunch of buildings. And I'm just really going to alternate my brush with black, white, and brown at this point. So I'm going to start with just black and white on my brush. And really what I'm doing is I want there to have a little bit of dimension in some of these far buildings. So I'm just going to do some vertical lines, maybe a couple of horizontal lines, to give the illusion that some of these buildings are getting a reflection or being highlighted by the sun that we're going to have in the distance in a minute. So I'm doing them really small off in the distance. Maybe I put a little bit on the sides of these buildings in through here. So right now I'm really just kind of adding gray to some of these buildings. Maybe there's a building here that has a long top to it, and I'm starting up at the top, and I'm going to work my way towards the outer skirts of the city. So when I'm up in the top area, I'm really small with my mark making, and that's all we're doing is little mark making. We're doing horizontal lines and vertical lines to insinuate the structure of these buildings. But again, I'm not doing much because it's in that twilight kind of time of the day where we wouldn't be able to see much detail on them. And then as I move myself into the area that's closer to us, I'm going to make them a little bit bigger. But for me, I'm only having my city come to about here. The rest of it's going to be like trees and stuff like that are just surrounding the city. So again, brown, black, and white, and I just kind of keep alternating the colors on my brush. And as I come in through this area, maybe I've got some long or some taller ones, and you can see I'm just doing horizontal and vertical, and I'm really trying to be not systematic with it, so that way it appears that some of the buildings are taller or, you know, have more structure to them. If you ever do anything that you feel is a bit too much, you just bring back some of the black, and I'm not washing my brush, so that way I have light spots and dark spots throughout these buildings, and I really just don't want it to look too systematic. So again, I just am kind of having fun with the way that I'm putting them on here. I'm going to have some taller ones, but I just have to make sure that I don't, you know, that's my main goal, is to not make them too systematic. You can put some along the edge of the road coming in through here if you want to, like there's a little strip of stores or something along the edge. You can have fun with that. Another key is to keep your lines vertical as opposed to diagonal. If you start making them diagonal, that's going to make them look more like trees as opposed to buildings. And do a bright one every now and again. That's going to allow it to look like, you know, maybe the lights are on, or there's, you know, it's being hit by the sun a little bit more. So you can certainly have fun when it comes to that. And again, I'm just kind of enjoying this process and making a whole bunch of vertical and horizontal type of shapes. So rectangles and squares, and, you know, those are my main shapes that I'm making, just some rectangles and squares, and some are lighter and darker. I'm using brown, black, and white on my brush to just kind of get these in here, and that's looking pretty good to me. I feel like a good representation of some different size buildings, some different color variations on them. And then we are going to be utilizing our large brush for the next step. So once you've got your subtle city off in the distance, which will be illuminated by the sun in a little bit, you can put this small brush away, take out your large brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're painting ourselves the first layer of the forest type of area that's surrounding the city. So I'm using my large brush, and I'm going to be using green and black paint. So I know that when we use this green with black, especially with black as our base color, it will dry darker because of that black base. Depending on the thickness of the paint, it will change various shades of green throughout it. So the thicker your paint is in one area, the brighter the green will look, and the thinner the paint is, the darker it's going to look. So you get these varieties of tones without really doing much work at all. And if you want to, or if you feel like you've gone too much or put too much green in one area, you can just pick up a little bit of black and dull it down. So I'm starting with just green paint. I want my trees to look bigger down at the bottom and smaller as they go towards the interior of the city. So I've got a good amount of green paint on my brush right now. I'm going to be applying this in like a stippling type of brush stroke. And I'm starting down here because I know that I have the most paint on my brush right now. And as I work my way towards the interior of the forest, it will get darker and darker because I'm going to have less paint on my brush. So I'm just kind of I want to give the illusion of treetops, which is why I'm giving kind of a curved look to the top of these. And as I go towards the little bits of the city, I'm going to be just dotting a little bit less. I have hardly any paint on my brush right now, so I think I'm actually going to reload a little bit, but you can see where I'm showing these, continuing to keep those dark spots throughout, or some dark spots. I'm going to put some on in through here to give the appearance of some trees in through here, and then as I go towards the city, I'm just doing a lot less dots. So that's going to give you the appearance. And we're going to be doing little highlights and stuff when we put our sun on. But right now I'm just kind of giving myself the insinuation of treetops. You can even cross some over in front of this side of the road, the bottom side of the road. You can cross some of your trees over that road a little bit, and that's going to make it look like we're kind of peeking through. You can even cross it over some of your buildings a little bit at the edge over here. So feel free to make this as lush of a forest as you want to. And then once you feel like you've got enough on here, if you need to, you can pick up a little bit of black and just make sure that you don't have any unpainted areas, or if you feel like you want to dull anything down, you can use the black to do so. And I would definitely wait for it to dry. It changes so much as it dries because of that black interior. So before you cast judgment upon if you have too much or too little, just let it dry for a couple minutes, and then if you need to add more, you can feel free to do so. We're going to be switching to our medium brush for the next step. So once you've got your first layer of your forest on, you can put your large brush away, take out your medium brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we are finishing the hair on the head. I'm going to be using my medium brush. The colors I'm using are black, brown, orange, yellow, and white. And really all I'm looking to do is just make sure that I have a fully painted area and that I have a little bit of a highlight over on that right hand side. You could make this be any hair color that you'd like. I'm just going for a brownish type of hair, and you could make yours long hair or short hair or put a ponytail on it. I'm just making mine kind of a neutral hairstyle, maybe a little feathered on the side, but it's just going to be nice and neutral. I want it to be pretty dark down in this back area. I'm having the hair just come in through this area. So it's going to be black and brown here. Then I'm going to transition to mostly just brown on my brush in through here. And then as I hit these little tips, that's when I'll be using orange, yellow, and white to make it look like it's being highlighted by the sun over there. So I'm going to put a tiny bit of black and brown on my brush just to make sure that I've got this back area nice and finished. And when I'm doing hair, especially now that I'm in the stage or in the step where I want you to be able to see the direction of the hair, every brush stroke that I do is intentional as to what way the hair is lying. So I just did brown and black there. I'm not going to wash my brush. I'm just going to pick up brown now, and this is going to I'm working from the bottom and working my way up. And I'm really just putting the brush strokes in the direction that I want that hair to look like it is coming off of the head. So if I wanted it to go straight down, I'd go straight down. I also want it to look like there is shape to the head. So as I'm getting towards the top of the head, I just want to make sure that I'm giving it some kind of little bit of a curve, whether it's a curve back here or a curve along the side, just again to tell the viewer that this head has some shape to it and it's not just flat. You can direct the viewer to understand a whole heck of a lot just by putting a directional brush stroke on the painting. And I'm leaving a little bit of that darkness to see through that brown, so that way it's got a little bit of dimension to it. And then as I come towards the front of the head, this is where I'm again not going to wash my brush, but I'm picking up a little yellow, orange, and white all on my brush at the same time. And I don't want to overdo it, so I'm going to just tap my brush off on my paper towel. I can always add more, but starting slow is definitely the smartest move, so you don't overdo it unnecessarily. And then I'm just going to bring some of these pieces back in through this direction, making sure I go all the way to my sky. So I don't want any unpainted area between my head and my sky in through there. And I'm just kind of bringing it back in a direction that I feel it would naturally kind of go. I suppose you could show an ear too if you wanted to get more detail in there. You could certainly paint yourself an ear. And I'm just going to get these little bits of highlights up on the edge of the head. And again, if you feel like you've gone too far, just, you can either continue to work at it or just let it dry for a couple of minutes. And then you can come back in with a little bit more information. And sometimes it makes it a little bit difficult if you've gone too far and you've put too much paint, and it makes it a little difficult to correct on the fly. But if you can just give it a couple minutes to dry, that helps you to work through that situation. And then I'm just going to kind of keep tweaking it until I've got enough lightness on here. I might give it a minute to dry, and then if I feel like I want to add anything more, I can certainly do that. But we're going to actually be using our large brush for the next step. So once you've got your beautiful hair on here with all your highlights, you can put this medium brush away, take out your large brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're putting our feathers in place, the base coat of them, with our large brush. So how I'm going to do this, I'm going to pre-mix myself a warm gray kind of color, and really what I'm doing is I'm utilizing the darkness that we had as the base coat as that under kind of shadowy color, but now I want to build my feathers into a structured type way, with them being maybe longer at the bottom and a little bit shorter up at the top. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add another kind of dark tone to the whole wing, but in a more organized fashion, and this is going to kind of put each feather in essence in place. So what I've done is I've pre-mixed myself a kind of a medium to warm gray. So I have used brown, black, and white to get this shade of gray. So how I did that was I took about equal parts of black and brown, and I added just a tiny touch of white into it. The white will easily take over really fast, so you don't need much, but I do want this color to be evident or to be able to be seen on top of this. So you want to make sure it's just a little bit lighter than whatever you have on that base coat already, so you're going to be able to see it. So here we go. This is about the area that I'm going with my color. And then what I'm going to do is I take my bristle brush and I squish it on the side of my palette, so that way my bristles are kind of in control. And I'm going to give myself, in essence, kind of a roadmap as to where I want all of my feathers to go. I want them to be really kind of long down at the bottom. I do want there to look like there's kind of a shadowy area in through here as well, but we'll add that definition in a little bit. And then they get shorter and shorter as they come up the top. I want them to have a lot of movement, so they're going to have curve to them. So where I'm going to start this is I'm going to start over maybe on the left and the bottom and then just work my way up. So I'm going to be using mostly just the corner of my brush throughout this process. So this is going to give me, in essence, the formation of these feathers. So as I come down towards the bottom of my canvas, maybe I don't add the tips of them. So maybe some of them kind of come off the canvas in through this direction. And as I start to run out of paint, that's going to allow you to see some of that information underneath. And I'm not over painting it. I don't want to paint the entire area. I want to make sure that you can still see some of that darkness underneath. As I come up in through here, I'm going to start to make myself almost like a triangle type shape. I think I'm going to lighten mine just a little bit more, so I'm feeling like my base color is a little bit darker than I thought it was. So I want to lighten up my gray just a little bit more so I can see it and you can see it, because I know it's going to turn a touch darker as it dries, and I just want to make sure that we can all see it. So I just added a teeny bit more white to that to get it a little bit lighter so you can see what I'm doing. And as I come up my my wing, I'm concentrating more on the tips of the feathers as opposed to the interior part, because what's going to happen is I'm going to have them overlapping one another. And because I'm working from the bottom and working my way up, that's going to allow me to overlap those tips a little bit. And I'm just kind of going through in kind of a systematic way where I'm doing them I want them to kind of look on the curved side. I'm going to get these little ones kind of coming over here. And as I work my way up the canvas, what I'm going to do is when I get up towards that top area, I'm going to have them shorter and shorter. So again, I'm not using a lot of paint on my brush. I'm using the corner of my brush to create the little tips of them. I'm allowing them to overlap one another, which gives me that three-dimensional look to it. I think I want to redo these ones down here with the darker or with the lighter color. Something like this, just making sure that I've got everything that I want. As I'm going towards the top, I'm gonna make sure that I've got some coming out the sides. I want them to be curved, and I'm just going to kind of allow these little tips or points to kind of be evident. I'm going to make them smaller and smaller as I come towards the top of the shoulder of the wing, something like this. And then I'm kind of almost doing it in rows, I guess, is what I'm feeling like. I'm creating almost these rows, but not too straight. They definitely have some movement to them. And I'm going to just go ahead and bring these all the way in through this area. And again, I'm still just continuing to overlap. And this is where you can start to, if you wanted these wings to go out a little bit further, or, you know, have a little bit more movement on top of the original piece that you had put on there, you can certainly do that. And the trick is just to not overdo it. We will have additional layers on this, so that will enhance the look of this, but just trying to not overdo it as I'm coming in through here. Again, up and through here, I'm going to have them smaller, so I don't necessarily need to do that triangular shape. I can really just kind of pull a little bit of this, like a little point off into the, you know, into the edge of it, even if, you know, I just kind of go a little bit quicker with these almost like little jab type of brush strokes to get these little shorter feathers to appear. And then as I get towards the top in through here, you're not going to really see all of the detail of it. We're going to have lots of highlights on top of it. So if you don't get individual little feathers, that's okay. So that's the right wing. I'm going to put just the hint of it over here on the left. So I'm just going to give something similar in through here. I think they might almost touch a little bit in the center. At least my angel wings are going to. So something like that, just to give the illusion that there is that second wing in through there. And then we are going to be utilizing our small brush for the next step. So fiddle with this all you want. If you feel you did too much, you can bring back some of your black or some of your brown to go in between these areas, or if you have some unpainted spots, you can certainly pull some of that black or brown in between some and just fiddle with it. And then when you feel like you're all set, you can put this large brush away wherever you'd like to. Take out your small brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're putting our sun in, and we're putting the glow on all of the buildings and the trees and all that good stuff. So I'm using my small brush. And I'll be using my large brush also, but I'm going to start with my small brush. What I'm going to be doing is I'm going to put the glow on the city and its buildings. Then we'll go do the sun, and we'll work from there. So my yellow and my orange are translucent. I'm going to be using them as a glaze of sorts to create a glow on top of my buildings, and then if I need to, I can come back and add little highlights. So I'm going to use yellow with a touch of water. I just dipped my brush in my water to rub onto my buildings. So as long as your paint is see-through, which means you can either do it with water or with a liquid medium, or if it's already translucent, you don't have to do anything other than rub it on here. But I want to make sure that I can see the buildings underneath. So I have to make sure that it's see-through. So now I'm going to do the same thing with a little bit of my orange. So I just dipped my brush in orange and water, and I'm giving myself some orange glow on my buildings, something like this. I know my sun is going to be somewhere in this area, so this is why I'm doing these glows over here. And then I'm going to just utilize, without rubbing the paint on there, I'm going to utilize orange and or yellow to add little bright pops of highlights onto some of these buildings or to the tops of the buildings. So I know that my sun is going to be right here, so the buildings on the left would get the highlight on the right, and the buildings on the right would get the highlights on the left. So you can use any intensity you want. yellow, orange, and or white to add these bits of glow to all of the buildings. I just added a bit of white onto my brush to make sure I have a couple of little extra sparkle pieces in through here. So yellow, orange, and white is just what I'm using right now to intensify the glow from the sun onto these buildings. And this is going to really put that atmospheric dimension throughout the city. And I'm concentrating it mostly, or the lightest of the light, in through the center of the city, because that's where I'm going to have my sun appearing. And then once you've got enough glow on all of your buildings and the however intense you want it to be, then I'm going to wash and dry my small brush, and I'm going to put my sun on, and I'm going to start that with just white paint. So a little bit of white paint on my brush. I'm going to put my sun somewhere in through this area, in through here. I guess I'm putting it near this building, which would make that building glow. Excellent. And I'm not doing it more than like the size of, I would say, I don't know, a pea, maybe a little bit bigger. So I'm doing just a little bit of white, getting it on here. Once I've got it where I want it, maybe I want mine a little bit bigger than that. A little bit bigger. Once I've got it where I want, then I just need to intensify it and get it to kind of spread out in that atmosphere. So how I do that is I'm going to be using yellow, orange, and white, and I'm just going to kind of pull any streaks of intense color that I want to. You can even bring it in front of the sun if you want to. If you want, you can add lightness to it with a little bit more white. You can really make this as dramatic as you want. You can have these low-lying clouds throughout that sky, and that, showing that there's lots of activity in the sky. So have fun with how intense you want it. But once you've got the glow on, or the sun on there in the position that you want, if it's not vibrant enough for you, you just kind of keep adding that white right into the middle, and then adding a contrast around the sun with either the yellow or the orange in its most vibrant state will allow that sun to pop out. So I just put yellow on my brush, and if I just add almost a yellow glow ring of sorts right next to or touching that sun, that's going to make it pop out to the viewer a little bit more. So that's just a little trick in order to get it to appear even brighter. And then you just kind of keep working with as much intensity as you want. If you want it to be, have more orange down towards that horizon line, you just keep fiddling with the rest of the sun or the rest of the sky to make it whatever way you want. Then I do want some beams of light coming from my sun, so I'm going to use white, yellow, and orange on my brush at the same time with a little bit of water so I can pull it, and then I'm going to get it to kind of pull right through my city. So I need it to be, and you can do it in your sky too, I need to have moisture in the equation so I can pull it. And again, you can have these as intense as you want. I'm having them in front of the buildings. I'm having them just kind of go all over my entire landscape here. And I'm being cautious. I'm kind of going a little bit slower when it comes to my beams of light, because I don't really want to overdo it. But if you find that you've overdone, yours, you can always come in and, dull it down with a little bit of the original colors. And I think I'm going to put a little bit more yellow. Yeah, a little more yellow and orange in my beams of light. So the beams are coming directly from the sun. So you just always pull them right from the center of that sun. And then, I like this one over here. And then if you've dulled down the center of your sun, you just go back with a little bit of white paint. Make sure that you still have that intensity. And then I'm going to put a little bit of glow on my forest. So that's where I'm going to bring my large brush into the equation. So I got my large brush, and again, I'm going to concentrate on it nearest to the city. So I'm going to be using orange yellow with a touch of white on my brush at the same time. And I'm going to wipe it off on the side of my palette or dab it on my paper towel, whatever I feel I need to make sure that it's going to be very subtle. I don't need a lot in through here. I'm just going to kind of dab away at the tippy tops of some of these trees. I think I want a little bit more orange on my brush to give myself a little bit more of that orange glow. And I'm going to do it pretty, you know, lots of little speckles to make them look like they're far away, but I'm adding quite a bit to make sure that it looks like there is, in fact, a nice, beautiful glow. I think I'm going to bring it back here just a little bit, and I'm really just hardly touching my canvas at all. And again, if you feel like you've done too much, just, you know, let it dry for a minute and go back and modify it. You can even put little pieces of, or little flat spots by just wiggling your brush left to right. That'll look like there's little grassy knoll kind of areas. And then once you've got this all done, you could, if you needed to or wanted to do anything with your other trees, you could certainly go back into your green or your black and just, you know, keep fiddling with those as much as you want. And then we're going to be using this large brush for the next step, so you can wash it and dry it and get ready. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're doing the second layer, or the second step on our feathers for our wing. So I'm using my large brush, and we're in essence doing a similar process to the delineation of our, where each feather is, only we're going a little bit lighter on the gray, and we're going to paint less of the surface area. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take what I have left here, or some of it, and add a little bit more white to it. So I want a lighter version of my gray, and this again is going to add to the dimensional aspect of the wing, and it's going to allow us to progressively get these feathers to be lighter and lighter as they work their way towards the exterior of the wing, which is going to make it just pop right out of the canvas for you. So I've got myself a little bit lighter version of my gray. I don't need a lot of paint on my brush, so I'm wiping it off on the side of my palette so I don't have too much. And as I do this, again, I'm going to work my way from the bottom, but I'm going to, at this point, start to leave a little bit of darker area in through here. For me, my main wing is going to be kind of structured in this area, as if it, like when it's relaxed and down, it would cover this area in through here. So I'm going to leave a little bit of darkness in through here, but I still want to make sure that we see the edges of it. So I'm just going to use a little bit of this lighter color just to give myself a little hint of the lightness over here on the side, something like this. And again, if you feel like you do too much, or it's just not working out for you, you can go back into the original gray and just kind of modify that. And again, we'll be working in this in a minute. So I'm going to just move my canvas like this so you can see the bottom area here. So I have that lighter gray on my brush. And when I do this, I'm not going to paint the entire feather. I'm really now just focusing more on the bottom part of the feather as opposed to the entire feather. So this way, what I'm doing is I'm working these little bright areas on the exterior, the tips of the feathers, which is going to make you see them much more, and it's going to make these more three-dimensional. And you might not get every single one exactly the way that you had planned it out the first time. I'm not pushing very hard with my brush. I'm just really kind of utilizing the tip of my brush to almost do a light, like a dusting type of motion with it. And I'm watching where I've got, you know, that original little point that I put on there, and I'm just working my way towards the top. Over here, I'm putting them a little bit more in a curved direction towards this way, and on here I'm doing them more like that. So you can see that I'm trying to give it a good amount of movement so it looks like it's fluffy and it's got you know, lots of thickness to it. And then I'm just going to make sure that I've got these little tips in through here. You probably have noticed I have not reloaded my brush yet because I want it's so much easier to use less paint and add more when you need to than it is to need to remove the paint. And then as I get up towards this tippy top, I'm going to start to extend some of these wing or feathers a little bit more out the side to give it a little bit more fluff. So as I'm coming up towards these ones, you can pull them out just a little bit more if you want to, and provided you don't paint over all of that original layer that you put on there, you'll be able to see the difference. I think I'm going to add a couple more in through here, and we're going to have lots of bright ones highlighted on top of these in a minute. We're just getting the again, enhancing the footprint of the individual feathers that we put on there. But when you get up towards these smaller ones, you're not going to see all of the detail to them, but so they might end up almost merging together in some respects. But if you can continue to see some of that area underneath or those dark spots underneath, that's going to provide that illusion to the viewer that this in fact is three-dimensional and has lots of dimension and lots of texture to it. And again, these ones, as I'm coming in through here, are going to be my smaller ones, but I want them to really look like they make sense. So how would they come off of this side of the wing? I feel that they would be coming off in this curved type of motion, but you might find that you feel that yours would come off in a little bit different of a motion. And I think that's looking pretty good. I'm just going to put my head back here for a minute, just make sure that I've got this all in through here. I think I might add a little bit more darkness down here. So before we go on to the next step, I am gonna just wipe my brush off on my paper towel. I'm gonna pick up a tiny bit of black paint just to get a little bit more dimension in through this bottom section of the wing. So just a little bit of black paint on my brush, on my dirty brush. So this is going to make this back area almost sit back a little bit further or deeper into the back of the angel and give it a little bit more dimension. And you can also utilize it to ruffle up your feathers along this edge in through here if you wanted to. So I think that's looking pretty good. And then you can just fiddle with yours. We're going to use the same brush for the next step. So once you've got this done, you can wash and dry your large brush and get ready for the next step. All right, so what we're going to do for the next step is we're finishing our wing. So I'm using my large bristle brush. My dominant color is going to be white, but I'm also going to be using a little bit of my yellow and my orange to add like a sunsetty or sunrisey glow upon this beautiful wing. And if I need to, I can certainly go back into any one of my grays that I made, the lighter gray or the darker gray, to make sure that they blend a little bit. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to start with just white on my brush, and I want to make sure that my bristles are in control. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to squish, oh, I guess I had a little bit of gray on there. I'm going to squish my brush on the side of my palette in my paint, which will bring my bristles together. And then what I'm going to do is you can start really, down at the bottom and work your way up. But if you're going to do that, again, just, you've got a bunch of paint on your brush, proceed cautiously because you don't want to make all of this white down here. So even if you have to, just kind of wipe your brush off on your paper towel and use that little bit of paint on your brush. I want the brightest areas to be over on this right hand side and up along this edge in through here. So I'm not going to do a lot back in through here. I might, when I have very little paint on my brush, I might come in and do a little bit more highlights on some of these, but not much. So I'm going to start over here kind of on the right hand side in through here and giving myself these bright, bright highlights over on the right-hand side. And as I start to feel myself running out of paint, that's when I'm going to start working my way in towards the interior. And I'm going to maintain the tips of these feathers. That's going to allow, again, the viewer to understand the shape of them and to make them pop out even more. And I feel like I'm running out of paint enough where my brush is pretty almost dry, so I can utilize that when it's in that state to come back over into this darker side and just wisp in a little bit of that additional highlight on the tips of some of these back in through here. And you could add a little bit of brown to your brush if you wanted this to look a little bit more warmer over on this back side, or you could even, I'm picking up a little bit of that lighter gray, so that will help it to kind of transition into this darker area without going full on white. So if it's going too white on you, then just pick up the white with some of your gray, and that will help you to transition into the darker area. And then as I'm working my way towards these the brighter ones, or the ones that are closest to the edge, that's when I'm going to utilize more of the white, and then I will eventually start working with the yellow and the orange. But I want to make sure that I've got enough of that lightness on there before I start pulling in the yellow and the orange, because it's hard to pull those back. So I'm still picking up white. I have a little bit of that gray remnants on my brush, which is totally fine. And this is where you get to really pull out some of these tips of the feathers. That's going to allow you to get that extra fluffiness to the appearance of this. And you don't want it to look too organized. So as I'm doing this, I'm trying to keep these, not so systematic. I want some to fall in front of the others. We do have a pretty good roadmap as to where the majority of them are laying, but again, I'm trying to get mine to look nice and realistic, on the more realistic side. So to me, they wouldn't be terribly organized. And I'm just working my way towards this top in through here using shorter brush strokes, giving myself a little bit more fluff around this edge. And when I come into here, this to me looks like it would be really bright, like that would catch a lot of the sun from over here. So I'm going to, I have a little extra white on my brush right now to get this little interior, this little corner of the shoulder area, to get a little bit more extra lightness on it. Just pull that in through here, give you that extra bit of illusion. And then I'm going to make sure I've got some all the way to the edges. And then I just kind of, again, before, I guess I had a little orange on my brush. I guess before I start adding those really bright pieces that are going to tell the story of the sun, I just want to make sure that I've got enough brightness on all of my pieces to make sure that when I do start adding that yellow and the orange, that I only need to do a little bit. I'm not going to need to go hog wild. I've got just about everything in place except for that bit of highlight. So that way when I get to that point, I'm not going to overdo it. I will just give it the amount it needs, and then it should be done. And so I feel like I'm getting there, just a little bit more in through here. And then once I feel like I've got it all, yeah, this is looking beautiful. I would like this angel to come and be my guardian for a couple of days or for a lifetime. That's everybody. I think everybody needs their own guardian angel, and it can come in any form, any shape, any being, whatever you believe is the way that it works. And I think I'm ready to start adding that final bits of highlight, but just, finessing it a little bit more. And you can certainly take as much time finessing yours as you want to. I just kind of keep wisping in these the white with a little bit of gray, maybe just a little more dimension back here. Don't forget about this one back here if you feel like you need anything there. And now I think I'm ready to start adding my highlights with the yellow and the orange. I think as I'm still tweaking in through here. All right, I'm ready. I'm going for it. I'm gonna go white, yellow, and orange are gonna be all on my brush at the same time. So I have white, yellow, and orange. And again, once you start, that's you know, that's going to give you your information from the sun. So I'm just going to kind of start cautiously here with a little bit on my brush, giving myself these little bits of information. I'm going to bring some in through here. And you know, if you do go too much, don't be alarmed. You can always just wait for it to dry for a few minutes and then just add some more white back on top of it, which I'm sure throughout this process I will be adding a little bit more white while I'm doing it initially, so that way the colors can intermingle. I don't just want these sunrise or sunset colors to lay on top of my white. I definitely want them to look like they're intermingling, so I will in a second probably start add a little bit of white back on top of them. And again, you can get yours to be as vibrant as you want. You can have these you know, glowing colors as bright or as soft as you want. It's going to be totally up to you, but the most intense part about it, I think, would be over on the right edge of it. I'm going to pick up some more white right now just to get these colors to kind of intermingle a little bit more in through here. And this is where you can, if you need little tips to you know, emerge from these, you can certainly get those little points to happen. Make sure that you've got the direction on those wings that, or on the individual feathers that you want. And then you just kind of keep fiddling with it until you feel that you've got the you know, the intensity that you were hoping for, that you've got all of that information on there. You can keep adding light spots and dark spots if you want to, but we have one little tiny step left to go, and it's going to be with that small brush. So once you've got all of your beautiful feathers nice and finessed and they're doing exactly what you want them to, or they're making you happy in whatever state that they are, you can put your large brush away, take out your small brush, and get ready for the next step. All right, so we are on to the final step. This is the final step of every painting, which is to sign it. So I usually sign mine in the bottom left or the bottom right corner. I'm going to sign this in the bottom right corner. I think I'm going to sign it with, I'm going with green paint, and I'm going to hide it in my trees. So I'm going to go down in this real dark area and sign it with green paint. I do my initials, but you could certainly do your first name or the date or a symbol or whatever you'd like for your identifying mark to be. It's your painting. You sign it however you would like. And that is going to conclude this painting. I hope you enjoyed the process. I hope you painted yourself a beautiful guardian angel, and I look forward to painting and sipping with you again sometime.